Hey guys, today I'm discussing why I, or more specifically you, want to win with a synergy-based win. Alrighty, so we're discussing why I, or you rather, I guess, want to win your games of EDH with a synergy-based win. This is something that I guess I've kind of come to in the last couple of months to year or so, or whatever. But I found that when I started playing Craterhoof Behemoth, that it just was unsatisfying. Yes, it would win a lot of games, but often enough, it was just like, oh, okay, I have this thing that just happens to win me the game. Yeah, sure, it kind of works with what I'm doing because most of what I'm doing is getting creatures on the battlefield, amassing a big board, getting ready to attack people, and then smashing them for damage. That's the way I like to play the game. So it works well with that kind of strategy, but for the most part, it doesn't synergize with whatever the actual deck's doing. So I often found that it was like, oh yeah, I could win with this, but it actually doesn't do anything for the deck as it is. It doesn't let the deck pop off in a natural way that it would pop off if you were to try to win with that deck. So I went with going, okay, well, instead of playing this very generically good card in my deck, I want to play a card that is, very specific to what my deck is doing, whatever it's doing. We'll find one in a second and discuss it, and, go through them maybe. But again, I want to find something that synergizes or sort of synergizes with what the rest of the deck is doing and helps that deck go over the top or can help it, do something else that will basically lead to the deck winning the game in a synergy-based way. And I think more and more people should take that kind of mindset to heart because just playing things that, and I get this is different for CDH and whatnot or whatnot, whatever. But again, in regular EDH, and I get this is different for Jank because there is no win condition in Jank, I guess, for the most part, because you're just playing ladies facing left or chair tribal or whatever and things like that. But again, for every other deck that actually has a win condition for the most part, you want a synergy-based win condition. If you're playing zombies, if you're playing an aristocrat zombies, then you want aristocrat triggers to happen. You want to drain your opponent's life and, make lots of zombies so that you can keep sacking, keep draining, keep sacking, keep draining, and things like that. So those are the things that you want to, do when you're doing those sorts of things for the most part. You want your things to work together well. You want them to, give you more gas in the direction that you're already kind of going. So let's take my Omnath Locus of Creation deck. That was one of my most powerful decks, and it still is, but I found that, again, a lot of the generic cards just were like, I don't want to even play this card. For the most part, I was like, yeah, I could win with this card, but it's not an exciting or interesting win. And when I did play those cards, everyone else was kind of feeling the same, and I was just feeling deflated kind of when I play them because it's just like, oh yeah, this wins, but it doesn't do anything with what the deck's actually doing, and they're an expensive card that I don't 100% need for this deck. So it's just well, I can take them out and find other things that are more worth my time or more synergistic to what I'm doing, and therefore are more fun as well. They won't always win. Sometimes they might whiff to a degree or whatever, but still, even so, they will do so much more for what the deck is doing and feel much more satisfying for me and feel much more I've worked to figure this synergy out for the most part for my opponents rather than just, oh, here's Craterhoof, lol, I win, it still is oh, here's my big spell, whatever, lol, I win, but still it feels much more, this is fitting with what the rest of the deck's doing at least. So a couple cards that I went to put in, or I already put Abundance and cultivated Colossus in there already, but I felt like I wanted to rely on effects much more like that, cultivated Colossus abundance style of an effect much more, and I sort of went backwards a little bit with the way I took the deck because I realized what the deck wants and what the deck sort of needs is just more value for the most part. It always needs more lands, no matter almost what, because you once you've got your payoff, all you need is more lands so that you can keep paying those things off to make more tokens, keep amassing your board so that you can build up to killing people and whatnot. So that's the idea of it. So that's why Cultivator Colossus is in there. It's in there to get most of the whole deck out so that you can basically be like, I make all of these tokens, or I buff up all my stuff with all of these triggers and whatnot, so therefore everything is as big as however many lands were left in my deck, which can be a lot, especially if you have abundance, but it still can be quite a lot because, again, the deck is very heavy on lands, and it needs to be very heavy on lands. And another one was Reshape the Earth, which basically searches your library for 10 lands and puts them into play. That was really another one that I felt, this creates a huge impact and will basically often win me the game, or can win me the game and whatnot. Again, it can hit and miss, but still, it's one of those cards that, will get you something, and if it does something big, great. But if not, then you've got even more of your deck out of the way, so you're going to find your payoffs more. And again, losing 10 land does sound like a lot, and it is 9 mana or whatever, so you're not casting it to very late game for the most part. Even if you've got extra mana and whatnot, for the most part, you want to kind of cast it late game so that you can get more stuff out of it. But again, even if you get those 10 lands out, you still will have a lot of lands in theory left over in your deck because, again, the deck has to be extremely land heavy. So again, that was one of the ways I was like, okay, what is this deck doing? Let's look at what this deck is doing. This deck is looking for lands. This deck is looking for payoffs for playing said lands. So if I find things that help me get a lot of lands into play all at once, those are things that are going to really help me. I thought of Genesis Wave and a couple of other cards, but again, it sort of becomes like, well, sure, I could do that, or whatever it is, the Teamer Ultimatum, I can't remember its name right now, but again, cards like that can really be useful, but they can also be kind of whiffy to a degree because, again, they can't, like, some of them can't get lands and some of them mill the other cards and whatnot, things like that. Or with the Hydra, you only get to choose one of the cards to cast and things like that. Genesis Wave is obviously pretty good, but again, you really need to cast it for a lot of mana. But again, you can get to lots of mana with that deck. But again, obviously, again, you need to get those payoffs with haste, essentially, to a degree as well. So you don't just want to play something and then be like, oh, now what? Oh, I hope I can have this, board of stuff next turn or whatnot, because it's probably not going to happen very likely because people are going to be like, well, if he untaps, he probably kills us. So that's why you want it to happen with one spell being like the big finisher as well. So that's the way I look at it anyway. And when you get to 7, 8, 9 mana, that's where you should be just like, this card basically wins me the game, dude. So yeah, let's just say shuffle up and play again or whatnot. So yeah. But anyway, another deck, let's take another deck. The Squirrels deck. I went for a long time going that deck was a tribal Squirrels only deck. And I was just very sad with the deck because the deck really didn't do a whole lot. And that was kind of the charm of the deck to a degree. But again, the weakness of just like that deck being just Squirrel Tribal kept biting me in the butt. And just a lot of the cards that I sort of had in there just because they kind of made squirrels or because they were a squirrel or cared about squirrels to some sort of extent was like very detrimental to the deck. Not that it's gotten so much better from then. It is still better than what it was, obviously, to an extent, but it is also inconsistent still as it is. But I took out a lot of cards like that just weren't doing a whole lot, like creatures that just like buffed itself and whatnot, or if you have Threshold, or if you have, whatever this or that or whatever, you get some sort of benefit for this creature or for something. It was like, yeah, that's cool, but basically that never almost happens, and it's only on this one creature, so that's not really that worth it. I went down the route of going, well, what's this deck really about? I really want to make tokens, and I really want to get, as many tokens as possible and just swarm people with all the tokens in the world and kill people with squirrels. So that's the idea that I wanted to go with. Just get as many squirrels as possible, get as many tokens as possible, beat people down with tokens and with squirrels. So like that was the way that I sort of started going about, like putting other cards in there that were more, this makes tokens, so therefore it will make squirrels. The squirrels are the main focus of what is going on. It's still more into trying to make certain cards better or good or whatever, I guess, to a degree. There's still a lot of cards that are in there that are, this is in there because it is a squirrel card or whatnot, or it makes squirrels or it cares about squirrels, but it also is pretty darn good because, again, I get 4 squirrels out of it, so therefore I get 8 squirrels out of it, things like that. So it can be really useful and can do quite a lot of work for what the deck is doing. And then it also gives maybe squirrels +1/+1 or something, things like that. So I really heavily lent on things that could do those sorts of things that, like do something whenever you do something sort of style stuff. Like Ivy Lane Denizen was a card I was on the fence about, and the one that makes treasures whenever your stuff dies, I'm really on the fence about that because that's a real one that's just like, well, I plague wind everyone and, then what? Like it can be really good like that because then you just like, well, I plague winded everyone. And now I can just like untap and make a whole bunch of squirrels or whatever, or just try to beat people down because now the board's pretty clear and I can just deal with any threat at any time for the most part. But again, it just gets boring, in my opinion, when you can just like kill anything and answer everything. It's just like, oh, well, the game's over because, I can answer everything for the most part as long as it's a creature. And then it's like, well, as soon as you can't answer anything, then you're done for. Because, like, of course, people have to get rid of that because it's way too good. So I'm just like, well, I don't know. I don't really want to paint that big of a target on myself to a degree and whatnot, because that's not really what the deck's about. The deck's not about, well, I'm just going to kill all you guys' stuff. Like, if I have to kill all you guys' stuff, like, whatever, just to kill you guys, then of course, yes, I will try to do that. But, for the most part, that's not what I want to do. I want to, make a whole bunch of squirrels, attack people with a whole bunch of squirrels, and beat them down with those squirrels. So that is the idea more so, rather than I'm going to just put in this card that happens to work insanely well with my commander or whatnot. Yes, it would be a really good card, but again, it just sort of is too much. Again, it's one of those cards that you could say, well, again, I'm not really tutoring for it, and if I get it once here and there, it won't be too bad. But yeah, I don't know. That's a card I'm really on the fence about, but still, it would be quite good, obviously, but it's just not the route that I particularly want to go down. So there are things and there are times that I'm kind of like, well, that might be optimal, but that's not the route that I really want to go down. But there are other times that I'm like, no, this must be the most optimal thing, to a degree, because again, the deck to a degree needs that optimalization to a degree in certain slots, especially like in the ramp slots to a degree, to actually be able to play the game for the most part at the way that it wants to play the game. Because again, you don't want to sit there and go, oh, well, now I'm not able to do what I need to do or want to do or whatnot, whatever, at the times and places that perhaps I need to, because I just did not have, my 2 mana or 1 mana or whatever ramp spell when I needed it, or I didn't get my 3rd or 4th or 5th whatever land when I needed it, and I just didn't get it for several turns, and then that really just slowed me down and stopped me, because, it's a really aggro deck for the most part, and it's just not going to win many games if the game goes, too long and too much of my stuff gets removed and I'm slowed down too much. For the most part. So again, yeah, just like one of those things that about it that you really want to focus in on. Again, just like, okay, what is my deck? The way I want my deck to work, or what way does this deck want to work? Because also some decks want to work in a very specific way. So you often will be like, well, is this the actual way that I actually want to play? Because if that's not the way that I want to play, or that I find fun, or that my opponents find fun, then it's kind of like, well, how about let's not play that, because, I don't have fun with it, I lose interest in it, and my opponents lose interest in it. Therefore, it's not the kind of deck that I'll pull out a lot, because it's just like, well, yeah, and, not so fun for them to play with or to play against or whatever. A lot of the other decks that I have currently, I'm pulling apart. So those are the only 2 decks right now that I can really sort of talk about. I had Torrens sitting there for quite a while. I kind of went down the same route with Torrens in the whole Ivy Lane Denizen kind of plan. Making lots of squirrels, making lots of beasts, making lots of tokens, going infinite that way was a really good way to, use the whole deck. But it really didn't do much with like the commander or whatever. It just sort of fit the theme of +1 counters, plus the whole, oh, well, what's the new Sagada's enchantment, whatever it's called, from Crimson Vow, gives anything that has a +1/+1 counter, flying and base 4/4, is really quite dumb. So, yeah, of course, that was a really good card to put in. Cathar's Crusade was obviously a really good card as well in that deck. But again, more just like that was like the idea of like, how do I win with this deck? Okay, it's a +1 counters deck. So what do I want to do with this deck? How do I want to make this deck, explode and do the things that I want it to do when I want it to do them, and things like that. So it was a really interesting thought experiment and an interesting journey to go along and to try to do and whatnot. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. But again, I am tearing that deck apart probably for the most part. But again, when I build my other decks, this is sort of the lesson that I'm keeping in mind from that deck and from these other decks, is to go, okay, well, I still want to play the game the way that I want to play it, but I also want to win with the synergies that are baked inherently within what mostly I'm doing. So you want to find those synergies. Oh, I'm making treasures, I'm sacrificing treasures, or I'm sacrificing clues or whatnot. Okay, so how can I take advantage of that? I'm making a lot of mana from tapping my clues, or from tapping my treasures or whatnot for mana, or for doing something else, whatnot. How can I take extra advantage of that? How can I take extra advantage of this? What does my deck do? Oh, I exile stuff and can play it from exile. Okay, cool. How do I take advantage of that? What is it that your deck or your commander is trying to do? Focus in on that. Find ways to work with that, and then find ways to really abuse it and just like explode and pop off with it, so that you can win games at the end of the day and have fun with the deck synergies that, you know, you've been given. You're not just been given a deck to be like, oh, well, I'll play Craterhoof and just like do that, lol. You know, of course you can play Craterhoof if you want to play Craterhoof. I think to a degree, Craterhoof has become one of those cards that's kind of the mid-range power level decks upgrade that a lot of people toss in and then go, you know what? I've got to take this out because though it's really powerful and really good and really expensive, it doesn't really do that much for the deck overall. Yeah, sure, I am going wide and doing creaturey stuff and doing damage to people, but that's not nearly enough. You know, I need more synergy based ways to actually close out the game. Plus, these other synergies will give me so much more than what Craterhoof or whatever other cards will give me, or just a random, you know, tooth and nail or whatever, something that just says I find my 2 cards that I need and play them and win, whatever, you know, and whatnot. So that is the way that I look at it. But you guys can let me know the way that you look at it. Am I right? Am I wrong? How right or how wrong am I, or whatnot? Of course, I know how good Craterhoof and some of these other cards can be, but when you're building for synergy versus building for power, it's a much more different sort of game plan for the most part, and whatnot, in my opinion. So you want to basically build your deck as powerful as it can, and that means building for synergy, for the most part. Until you really can build for CDH power, you need to build for synergy. So you can let me know your thoughts about all of that sort of stuff. Write your thoughts down there in the comments below. I'll be sure to try to respond to all the comments. I really do love interacting and talking to you guys about all this EDH geeky stuff that we love, because as soon as you guys start talking to me about that stuff, I know I'm doing my job and doing it well and giving you the kind of content and kind of information that you guys want. And when you guys tell me stuff that you guys want to see, I'll bring it to you, because I know that's the type of stuff that you will watch and the type of stuff that you will enjoy and get more out of. So it really helps me help you to get the most out of the channel. So anyway, as I said, I'll see you down there in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Hey, you've just finished watching one of our videos. A bunch of other videos are popping up on your screen now for you to check out, so why not check them out?